On August 8, 1944, just outside Saintes, south of Caen in Normandy, France, the leather from his commander's gloves made a soft noise as Hauptmann Michael Wittmann tightened his hold on the cupola of Tiger 007, peering over the hedge-lined horizon with his Zeiss field glasses. His hands shook, but not with fright. Instead, it was a growing realization since sunrise that unsettled him. They keep arriving, dear God. They never ceased arriving. For 3 hours straight, his unit of 4 Tiger tanks had eliminated Sherman after Sherman. The fields bordering the Confalls Road were covered with 27 smoldering wrecks. Each Tiger accounted for a minimum of 6 enemy tanks destroyed. According to every tactical principle Wittmann had studied at the Panzer Troop School, their side was achieving a clear victory. The effectiveness rate was outstanding, approaching 7-1. However, using his binoculars, Wittmann tallied another 48 Shermans emerging from 3 separate avenues, newly arrived formations with inexperienced crews and full loads of ammunition. Farther behind, rising trails of dust hinted at dozens more on the move. Collectively, his 4 Tigers retained only about 12 armor-piercing shells. They lacked sufficient fuel for aggressive movements and had no reinforcements available. The grim calculation of destruction was now dictated not by single tank encounters, but by sheer manufacturing figures drowning out tactical excellence. What Wittmann observed and what every German tank leader would witness on all battlefronts was no ordinary clash, but a display of numerical manufacturing might destined to bury the Wehrmacht beneath overwhelming numbers. Minutes later, Michael Wittmann would be killed, his famous Tiger knocked out either by a Sherman Firefly of the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry or forces from Canada. Experts still argue which was responsible, but his last message recorded at 12:47 hours would embody the hopelessness felt by every German tanker opposed by American industry. Ammunition finished. Opponents' ammunition unending. The saga of German tank dominance had begun on May 26, 1941, at the Berghof, Hitler's mountain home. Ferdinand Porsche and Henschel and Son had brought forth the models that would evolve into the Tiger tank. Hitler, captivated by the 88mm main gun and armor claimed to be impenetrable by any Allied vehicle, gave the order for mass production immediately. He assured his gathered generals that this tank would equal the combat strength of a whole battalion of standard tanks. One Tiger was said to be capable of taking out 12 enemy machines. The Führer directive that followed established the roadmap for Germany's disastrous overconfidence. Superiority in design would outweigh mere numbers. Every Tiger would be a technical marvel, meticulously assembled by expert hands, dominating the war zone. The Americans, Hitler confidently told his advisors, would never be able to compete with German technical standards. Their armored vehicles, according to propaganda chief Goebbels, would be nothing more than Detroit-made tin boxes on treads. The initial Tiger exited the assembly line at Henschel's Castle plant on August 4, 1942. Completing it required 300,000 hours of labor. The workforce assembled 26,000 separate components. The transmission was meticulously fitted by expert craftsmen. Highly trained welders dedicated several days to the tank's armor plates. The interleaved wheel design and engineering feat that bore the tank's 57-ton mass needed careful assembly only seasoned workers could manage. Oberst Wolfgang Tamala, who observed trials of the first Tiger at Kumdorf, wrote in his assessment, "This vehicle exemplifies the apex of German engineering. No adversary could withstand its power. Should we manage to produce 100 each month, victory in the war would be assured." Germany, however, never achieved a monthly output of 100 Tigers at any time. The peak monthly total, after 2 years of refining the process, was 104 tanks in April 1944. At that point, American facilities were turning out 2,000 Shermans per month. The narrative of American tank manufacturing started not with strategic planning, but with a phone conversation. On May 28, 1940, William Cudson, who had been the head of General Motors, got a phone call from President Roosevelt. "Bill," said the president, "I'd like you to come to Washington. We have a need to build 50,000 airplanes and 50,000 tanks. Hudson's answer would set the tone for American industrial strategy. Mr. President, we want to construct the finest airplanes and tanks, but we can build the greatest number of them, and do so such that any young person from Iowa can repair them with basic tools like a wrench and screwdriver. The development of the Sherman tank was a direct result of this direction. During a design session at the Aberdeen Proving Ground on August 31, 1940, Army Ordnance outlined specifications that alarmed traditional military designers but pleased Detroit manufacturers. The tank needed to be simple for unskilled laborers to assemble, with parts that could be swapped among all models. The engines required the ability to run on various fuel types. Armor was to be weldable instead of requiring precise custom fitting. The track mechanisms had to allow a crew to replace them under field conditions. The turret ring needed to be broad enough for upgrades in the future. Major General Gladian Barnes, leader of Army Ordnance, addressed the contractors present, stating, "I have no interest in a flawless tank. What I want is a tank that is good enough, and that we can manufacture 1,000 of for every 100 the Germans turn out. Make it sturdy, make it easily repairable, and manufacture it by the tens of thousands." The difference in the German and American approaches to manufacturing showed clearly on the production floors themselves. In Henchel's Castle facility, 9,000 highly trained employees worked to build Tigers. The work environment resembled a large-scale medieval guild hall. Veteran craftsmen oversaw apprentices. Each Tiger tank was effectively crafted by hand. Upon finishing components, workers would sign their names in a gesture of pride in their workmanship. Untidier Franz Lehart, who had been employed at the Castle plant before being conscripted, later remembered, "We dedicated 3 days solely to the final drive assembly. Micrometers were used to verify every gear. Each weld underwent triple inspection. Identification numbers were painted by hand. This was not mass manufacturing. It resembled artistry." In contrast, at Chrysler's Detroit Tank Arsenal, which opened on September 15, 1941, conditions were vastly different. Spanning 1.25 million square feet, the facility was larger than all German tank plants combined. Rather than skilled artisans, the staff was made up of ex-automobile employees, homemakers, young people, and anyone able to pick up a riveting tool or welding torch. Rose Willow Monroe, later famous as Rosie the Riveter, participated in building Shermans at the Arsenal. She recounted her experiences. "I had never laid eyes on a tank before I began assembling them. They provided 2 days of instruction before assigning us to the production line. All tasks were split into manageable parts. My job was welding a single seam, after which the tank advanced so another worker could weld the next seam. Completing a tank took us 4 hours. The Detroit Tank Arsenal accomplished what German engineers deemed unachievable. They instituted assembly line tank manufacturing. By applying methods from car building, Chrysler's staff segmented the Sherman into interchangeable modules. Parallel assembly lines fabricated sub-assemblies, which were then united for final construction. The whole operation, from raw metal to finished tank, lasted just 48 hours. By December 1942, the production numbers already revealed a truth German military leaders would not accept. Detroit's arsenal alone was building 896 Shermans each month, more than double the numbers reported by various German intelligence accounts. All over the United States, 11 production sites were turning out Shermans. Detroit Tank Arsenal, Chrysler, 896 monthly as of December 1942. Grand Blanc Tank Arsenal Fisher Body, 385 per month. Lima Locomotive Works, 165 per month. Pressed Steel Car Company, 320 per month. Pacific Car and Foundry, 280 each month. Federal Machine and Welder, 240 monthly. American Locomotive Company, 310 a month. Baldwin Locomotive Works, 205 each month. Pullman Standard Car Company, 385 per month. Montreal Locomotive Works in Canada, 180 a month. Angus Shops in Canada, 145 each month. By December 1942, total monthly output was close to 3,500 Sherman tanks. At the same time, Germany's monthly Tiger tank production was just 34. That was a ratio of 103 to 1. General Major Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Panzer Forces, received these statistics via intelligence dispatches in January 1943. His journal note was blunt. If even half these figures are correct, the war is already lost for us. The production gap led to a series of subsequent effects that strengthened U.S. strengths. With the availability of thousands of Shermans, American tankers could practice using real tanks. At Kentucky's Fort Knox, the Armored Force School reserved hundreds of Shermans exclusively for instruction. Tank crews there spent 12 weeks mastering every detail of operation. They fired thousands of shells during gunnery drills. They drove their tanks hundreds of miles. They practiced upkeep until they could replace any element without needing sight. Private First Class Clarence Smuyer, who trained at Fort Knox in 1943, later stated, "We pushed those practice tanks to their limits. We drove until they failed, fixed them, drove them once more. By deployment time, I was more familiar with the tank than the tractor on my family's farm. I could identify every noise it made, its significance, and which implement was required for any repair." In Germany, the story of Tiger tank training was quite different. Since overall production never surpassed just over 100 tanks monthly even at its peak, there were virtually no vehicles available solely for training. At Putlow, the Panzer soldier only had 4 Tigers accessible for instruction. These 4 tanks were all that was provided to train crews for every Tiger unit in the Wehrmacht. Gerrit Kurt Klenny, who was assigned to the Schwer Panzerabteilung 503, recounted his training experience. He said they spent a total of 3 days inside an actual Tiger tank. During those 3 days, the majority of their instruction consisted of reviewing blueprints or practicing inside wooden replicas. Once they finally got their company Tigers in Russia, half the crew had never even started a Maybach motor. The difference in complexity made matters worse. A Sherman tank consisted of 15,000 components and needed 50 separate tools for service in the field. A Tiger, on the other hand, had 26,000 individual parts and required 230 unique tools for maintenance. American personnel could be brought up to basic operational skill in 4 weeks. Conversely, German Tiger operators required 3 months to reach even baseline competency, a span the Wehrmacht could not afford. D-Day, June 6, 1944, began the numerical equation that would annihilate Germany's armored strength. The Allied invasion included 4,000 tanks, mainly Shermans, with another 8,000 held back in England awaiting shipment. Opposing them, Germany tried to bring forth its finest. From 1942 onward, a total of 1,347 Tigers were manufactured, with about 430 operational across all war zones. In Normandy itself, only 102 Tigers could be assembled by the Germans. SS Oschamara from the ranks of Schwer SS Panzer Abteilung 101 saw the facts on June 7 close to Caen. They knocked out 8 Shermans during the morning fight. By later that day, 16 replacements had shown up. They destroyed 6 more from that new contingent. By nightfall, fresh units continued to appear. Their arrival was relentless, like a swarm of ants. One could squash tens, even hundreds, but still thousands waited behind them. The key point was in reinforcements. If the Americans lost a Sherman, a replacement would be shipped in from England in under 2 days. The resupply organization managed by Colonel Joseph Gillam kept a cache of 2,300 Shermans in British storage. Tanks damaged on the field could be restored within a day by mobile repair teams or else just abandoned in favor of fresh vehicles. By contrast, a lost German Tiger sometimes took weeks or even months to be replaced, if that was possible at all. Transporting each Tiger needed a special kind of railway carriage. Getting from Germany to Normandy took 5 days if everything went perfectly. Allied bomber strikes would often delay the trip for weeks instead. Of the 45 Tigers sent to Normandy during June 1944, only 17 completed the journey intact.